Quick question, how many of you are still on 7.6? Some flavor of 7.6. Okay, that's why you're
Lots
all
of hands.
here. Okay.
Anybody made the jump yet? Want to share their story about how easy it is? Then I asked this yesterday, who's still on 411? I got one hand yesterday, so I got more hands for 411 than I did for mass. Was not surprised, well, a little surprised, but wasn't expecting a 411 in the audience. Was not surprised by the mass number. Everybody's on the journey now. We're here to share the story of one journey that was made.
Okay. That's me. So yes. Quick introduction. I work for Wake County's GSA, General Services Administration Division. Wake County has the city of Raleigh in it. The county has about 1.1 million people in it. The entire county employs about 5,200 people. We've got about 200 buildings and 5 million square feet of...
Apologies, your mic is not working.
No.
Move it higher.
Higher.
Yeah.
Better.
Okay, so now say something.
Test, test. Test, test. Better now?
Perfect.
All right. Okay. So, Wake County, City of Raleigh, 1.1 million people, 5,200 employees for the entire county, 5 million square feet of that we take care of across 200 buildings. Our department, GSA, has about 130 people in it. Of that, there are two important divisions, physical plant, which has 57 people, and field services, which is 31 people. We were on 7612, I don't know, about 6 months ago, and I knew MAS 8 was coming, and it said, all right, I want to get ahead of the wave. That was one of my main goals because I did not want to be in the crunch later on. And so I started lobbying management saying, hey, we need to do this. So part of that, we had discussions with vendors, Cohesive, Project obviously, but we also talked to some other people just to kind of get, multiple voices and see what was out there, see what was potentially roadblocks, what was going to happen in all this. Like I said, for the deadline, we wanted to get ahead of everyone else because as of, September of 2025?
Yep.
That's the theory of when IBM's going to cut everything off, but, I'm not IBM, so I don't know.
I bet they stick to it.
Probably. One of the other great motivations for us was mobile. On 7612, yes, we could have had mobile, but in talking with people, if you were on mobile on 7612, you were going to have to redo it in MAS 8. Now, having had a discussion last night with some people that were on 7613, apparently that ports over, so that works in their favor. But so we decided to make the jump to MAS 8 first and then go to mobile. Yes. The more forum, if you guys are not signed up for that, I would encourage that because there are a lot of smart people out there asking good questions and getting smart responses. Apologies, I do not have the website, but if you do a search for the more forum, I'm sure it will come up.
I think it's just more.com.
More.com, okay.
Maximo Online Resource something.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it is.
Maximo Online Resources and Education. Oh, it's right there on
Yeah.
the slide.
It's on the slide.
Yeah.
I can't see over there.
Right. And migration preparation. Again, more discussions with the vendors. This was getting management on board, laying out the options for them, saying we can do this now, or we can wait and see if we get in line and crunched with everyone else. Knowing that there are some big names out there that have much more complex migrations than we were going to have. We kept our Maximo rather vanilla, partially through inertia, partially through a decision. So that was why that was there.
It is a key to having an easy upgrade, is having a simpler system, right? It helps.
Right.
For sure.
I have heard tales of people recognizing this and saying, all right, how do we pull some of this customization stuff out and use existing Maximo functionality? And that made a lot of sense to me and to them in terms of making their upgrade easier. The other thing that was kind of nudged us in this direction, when we were being hosted by Project with our 7.6 instance, we had bring your own licenses. And knowing that we were going to have to convert to points, we said, all right, let's test the waters and do an at-point conversion first. And quite honestly, that was easy for us. That was almost a background accounting function. I told Cohesive one day, all right, we're ready, go for it. They came back, I don't know, a few days later and said, okay, you're on points, go look at your points.
Sign the dotted line, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And I said, oh, wow, okay. And we started looking at it and keeping track because with the bring your own license, we were consistently butting up against licensing, and management was a little recalcitrant in buying more. When we got to points, that, I don't want to say it fixed itself, but all of a sudden we had a lot more breathing room. So I am very pleased with the at-point system. We discussed timelines and milestones with them, signed the contract, and sent the PO to them, and the process began. Okay. Yes. So starting in August of 23, we had weekly meetings to just make sure everybody was on track and what was happening was actually happening. Okay. So we originally had a plan. I thought because our instance was pretty vanilla and it looked pretty straightforward that this was going to be, I don't want to say a slam dunk, but a very quick process. I was quickly disabused of that notion. It was, oh no, you're not going to do this in X, you're going to multiply that by 2, maybe 3. For us, it was only 2. So I had an expectation. Maybe I was a little aggressive on it, shall we say, and thought we were going to do it in 3 months. It actually turned out to be a little over 6 before we finally went live with it. Project Tech and Cohesive were wonderful with this because the communication was there. It wasn't just the weekly meetings. I could email them and say, hey, I'm noticing this. What about this? Where are we with that? And I was getting answers, and things were progressing at a good pace. It wasn't too fast. It wasn't too slow, but it was moving along nicely. We kicked off in dev in January. As you can see, we did some, there was some back-end stuff that Phil can talk to in terms of, it was the queues, right? That we were on certain queues that we were going to try the Kafka queues, but then we found for us they weren't going to work, and I think we had to revert back to the Java queues.
Yeah, so we initially led with using Kafka queues and ended up using JMS standalone instead. Just one of those learning things, kind of working with the system. The JMS worked way better for your guys' integrations.
Yeah. So after we got some of that sorted and just other testing, you can't hear? I don't know what else we can do, right?
Try the other side.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do.
Or just go grab the handheld.
Oh, yeah, because that's going to work. Oh, here we go. Hard time hearing. All right, better? All right. Okay.
Third time's a charm.
So dev got done. So myself and a couple other people were in dev, testing things out, making sure that most of the basic functionality worked. Then we turned the users loose on UAT in February. Always a good thing to get the users involved. We probably heard that a lot around here, that get the users involved. So we picked a team. We had a team when we went to the cloud in 18, picked up most of the same team because longevity in county government. There were some changes, so we had to add some new names, take some old names off. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, UAT went on for a few months. We had a couple hiccups, nothing major, but then towards the end it was, okay, we're ready, let's go. And they took our most recent 7612 and over the weekend flipped it. We went in, we tested integrations, reports, front end stuff, and it worked.
I mean, really, it was just, a Friday night?
Yeah.
Friday to Saturday kind of.
Yeah, for us it was, yeah.
Take it, do the upgrade, move on. Low disruption.
Mm-hmm. I think this is where you came.
Yeah, there's definitely some technical challenges and kind of extended that timeline. A little bit of systems they were using was a table-based integration. So in 7.6, when we originally moved them to the cloud, we kind of know this stuff is coming. We've got to worry about the security. So We took all of their interface tables, rather than run them right in that Maximo database, right next to your work order table, your person table, all of those. We actually are running them in a dedicated integration database. Set that endpoint to be something else. We can put that in the DMZ. Everybody can talk to that one, secure that down differently. But that did lead to some extra challenges. As part of the mass upgrade, we're enabling object structure security. iFace table integrations use object structure security, so then we had to go start making new security groups, making sure that all the object structures we're using, we're utilizing that security group and tied back to the user. Just really enabling extra security and just little hiccups here, there, and everywhere that you have to deal with just as you do the upgrades. Another thing that we're doing with all of our mass customers is no longer using file-based, a remote folder for all your doc links. We're doing everything with S3. It makes it a little bit easier from the migration. We went ahead and could queue up all of that work in 7.6 and just makes one extra step that you don't have to worry about when you go to mass. And then communication and connectivity, we can have a team that just looks at that S3 and makes sure S3 is good. And then we can have another team. They don't have to worry about the persistent volume claims and OpenShift and backing that all up, and simplifies just a little bit. And then just as far as the integration goes, there was a custom 7.6 air handling app, just making sure that worked, does exactly what we need. And really it's all just preparation. What are we doing in 7.6, making sure, what can we do there that's just gonna make an easier upgrade. And that's something we're doing with a lot of our customers is, what can we do now before we upgrade to make that upgrade weekend, hours, days less, simplify that whole process. You got for the next slide. Yeah, so really as an outcome, obviously we got a new system info, right? We're using, I believe it's 8.11 here. Was a surprisingly easy, update DB. The system runs that update DB for us, as part of the mass thing. You point it at the 7.6 database and let it roll, right? Hopefully it goes well. This one was surprisingly easy. No big errors, no hang-ups for weeks on end. Very happy with that. And then because we were doing that object-based security, we're really locking down who can use those object structures, who can access things through the REST API. My security team loves that. Having that system property on makes them smile all the time, because that is a big level of improved security from their perspective, and making sure only users that should be able to use an object structure can use an object structure. Highly recommend. If you haven't looked at that, even in 7.6, it's an option. Takes a little bit of knowing who's using your APIs, but check the box. Flip the system property. Good.
Okay. All right. Still hear me? Just in case the mic broke. No, in terms of what Phil was talking about, I like the new app point system because now you can actually see your licensing, or I can now see my licensing. I was once a quarter before converting to app points, pinging them and saying, hey, I want a license report. They had some script that they ran, exported to Excel, and then I could review it. And that was nice, but it was always, I got to go bug them for something. And I wanted to be able to do it myself. The only other thing that I would just mention to you guys, if you're self-hosting now, be prepared, because they lock you out of the database. I can no longer go into the Maximo proper database and say, let's go update all these work orders for the past year because I know not gonna happen. And so while it was unusual and uncomfortable at first, in the long run, I think that's actually benefited our people, just because then, I'm no longer getting requests from my boss. Hey, we buggered one of those work orders. Can you go fix that? Sorry, doesn't happen. So it's for our protection and their protection all at the same time. Okay, back to this. So have a plan. So like I said, we made a plan, we reviewed our plan, we updated our plan because, we realized this was gonna slide or this was not nearly enough time to do X or test Y. And we learned going into it, but also during the process, that we had to be flexible because we just didn't know what we were going to bump into. Fortunately, we did not bump into a lot, but what we did, we said, all right, well, we're going to have to bump this out by a couple, 3 weeks, and maybe bring in a couple extra testing resources to make sure this is truly working the way we're expecting it to work. Now, we are a small shop, so we know each other very well. And when I say small shop, I mean small. So,
How many people do you have on your Maximo team?
2, me and Jerry. So that's about it. Anybody else we, rope in and for a very defined piece of what we need. Jerry has been with Maximo since the old MRO days. We self-hosted. He was the one that was there when we went to the cloud. He retired about 16. We went to the cloud and he retired. I guess that was it for him. But he's still hanging around. He still comes in a couple days a week to help out with stuff. And so he's become that one person. I have a Maximo question, I call Jerry. He's the first person I think of and question. Sometimes it's just spitballing, things like, hey, what do you think about doing X, Y, or Z? Could we do it this way instead of that way? Things like that. He's just that valuable a resource. So if you've got one of those people, please do not be afraid to use them. For me, it was a relief to be able to hand something off to him knowing that it would get done. The institutional knowledge that he's got, I don't want to say terrified, but I'm concerned that when he leaves, because I can call him and ask him, hey, why are we doing it this way with the work groups? And he'll come up with, oh, da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh, okay, that makes sense. And it may be time to say, all right, we've always done it that way, the 6 most expensive words in all this. It may be time to revamp that or look at it again, see if we can change our process, change what Maximo's doing.
Anybody else need Jerry's phone number?
You're right. You can't have it.
I can tell you why you're doing your stuff too. We've always done it that way.
The other thing is, which I'm very grateful for, the very good partners that we had at Cohesive, or have at Cohesive and Project Will Simmons, he was the one that I would email anytime we had, problems with the upgrade or something was going funky with the database. Like, hey, Will, what's going on with this? And he'd get back to me and say, let me think about it. And he'd come back and say, okay, it's done. And he'd give us an explanation too, saying, here's what went wrong and here's what we needed to correct. Trish Ghosh in the audience.
Wave your hand, Trish.
Yep, raise your hand, there you go. At Cohesive, she kind of herded the cats through the process, made sure that when I had a 3-month plan, she said, you really ought to think about that. And we'd have a chat, a phone conversation, a couple emails, and say, all right, Trish, you're right. All right, let's bump this out a bit because, all right, I see where it could be a little aggressive. Gina Poloni from Cohesive also, she was kind of the PM of the whole thing, so made sure the cats were being herded along, everybody was doing their tasks, greased the wheels if somebody needed to be contacted or brought in, she was the one for that. And Raj was a good technical resource for her as well. He would come along, we'd have some scripting issue, some object issue, something like that, and it was like, okay, Raj, just go handle it, and he did.
I think it's important to note, you're 1.5 people, really. I
Yeah.
count Jerry as a half.
Yeah.
But the extended team is really what made this, go a little smoother. You don't have time to
Right.
rewrite an automation script.
Could I? Yes. Is it more efficient to have them do it? Yes. That's what I came back to. Because along with Maximo, they also expect me to do other things at my job, which I don't understand, but okay. Lessons learned about upper management. Do I need to say more? Not having them on board, we'd still be on 7612 and I would not be standing in front of you.
I heard that one in the award ceremony a couple of times. So happy we have upper management support. They enabled this award. You saw the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a whole block of testers. There were 1 or 2 that didn't. I actually caught 1 or 2 of them afterwards and said, hey man, why didn't you test? I couldn't get in. Why didn't you raise your hand? Whatever, okay. Okay, training. So this is something that we knew that needed to be done. It's always in the backs of our head. So in January, we had a department-wide retreat. So there were 130 of us, roughly the amount of y'all in here. And someone stood up and said, hey, we're not getting any training. Now, he said it in a very general way, But everyone in that room knew exactly what he was talking about. We're not getting Maximo training because I could go to any 3 trade specialists in the group and say, how do you do a work order? And I'm guaranteed to get 4 different answers. And so it was one of those things that, okay, all right, this is a great opportunity for us to, I was thinking this is a great opportunity for us to level set, say, all right, here's how GSA is going to do work orders, going to do SRs, PMs, what have you. I got out there and all of a sudden it turned into a listening tour. Oh, you do it this way? Why do you do it this way? So it rapidly became, okay, we need to try and standardize this, but also allow for the differences between the different trades and the different work groups, because sometimes there was just valid reason for you do it this way because, okay, let's make sure that you're doing it that way and doing it properly. Okay, the other thing is it's not just, the training was not just a one and done. Admittedly, we are a small group, and so I'm a trainer. Not my first choice, but okay, I can do it. It's going to be ongoing training. I'd like it to be where a new person comes on and we can train them. Haven't quite gotten there yet, but that's still one of the goals and on the roadmap. The next thing that we're looking at doing is mobile. That was part of the whole reason for going to MAS 8 was mobile, because people are like, we want to be able to go out into the field, whip out our iPhones, and scan a barcode on an asset, have it connect to the work order, and I'm rolling. My time's clicking, and I can go do my wrench time, because that's what they want to do. They don't want to fill out paperwork. They don't want to scan for or look for, through 1,500 work orders, which one is theirs. They want to go do the work. Yeah, so the next trainings are for the future applications as they roll out. Okay, the topics are based on their roles, so the technicians and senior technicians, you only got this much because that's what you needed, and if you need more, let's talk about it, absolutely, but this is, coming from what I've heard through my listening tours, I now refer to it, this is what, we think you need. The trade specialists got a bit more because they're responsible for more. They're responsible for the technicians and the senior technicians, so they get, all right, here's how you think about PMs, here's how you think about SRs and work orders. The trade supervisors who are responsible for the entire work group get even a little bit more, just to make sure that they've got more of a vision over how their work group is working.
Rob, do you have an annual listening tour planned? Stop by everybody's desk?
Maybe not their desk, but, and that's speaking of that, I thought the trainings were going to be done in like 3 sessions. I think it ballooned into 9 just because people's schedules and what have you. And I didn't want the groups to be overly large because it's me. Just, I don't want to say against them, but I didn't need a group this size trying to train them all when they've got their laptops in there. That would have been interesting. So
it's a good word for it.
Yeah, there you go. So it rapidly became, groups of 6 to 8. We've got some groups that are overnight, first shift, early shift, because I'm thinking there's one group that does 4 a.m. to noon. So, okay, we can't do a 3 p.m. training for them, so we're going to have to move something to, their lunchtime, which was about 10, I think. So, all right, it works. We'll go with it. Okay, yeah. So again, the most expensive words around, that's the way we've always done it. Well, I would listen to that, okay, that's fine, and we're gonna let you keep doing it for a while, but those words in my ear means that needs investigation. Why are we doing it that way? If you've got good justification for it and good reason for it, fine, keep at it. If you don't know why you're doing it and it's causing problems downstream, let's talk about that. Yeah, making business process, this training did take a lot longer. Again, I thought it was going to be 3 sessions in a week. Oh no, I think it took almost a month, and it was, like I said, 9. So yeah, somewhere in that ballpark of those sessions. Yeah. And there were some things that we ended up defining for them. Shop time has always been one of those nebulous things. I said, all right, guys, here's what shop time is. I talked to, I want to say my peers, but I have none. So some of the people in admin said, all right, here's what I'm thinking shop time is. Does this make sense? And they looked at it and said, okay, I see what you're saying. So I went to them and said, here's shop time. The biggest thing that literally blew their minds, they were told never split a ticket. Okay, so we've all got P cards. They can go out, they can go to Lowe's, you need a part, you go buy a part. You were not allowed to split a ticket, which means you couldn't buy something at 9:05 and then turn around and buy something at 9:10 because finance was going to come down and wrap your knuckles, right? No, what they were trying to say is if you're going to exceed your limit, don't do it by buying two $700 items to avoid your $1,000 limit. That's what they're saying. So once they heard that, it was like, and they still were very ginger and tender about it, but that's one of the improvements we gave them. It's like, all right, now you can do this under certain circumstances. I still think they're tender about it. I don't know how much they're doing it, but I haven't heard screams from the gallows. So, all right, we're doing good on time. Okay, so short term, along with mobile, we're revisiting assets. So back in 2012, we had put assets in, and that's where they sat. So that was a bit of a disappointment. I was not around for that, so I don't know the full details of it, but assets sitting in Maximo, not really what you want, not what I wanted. So there's mobiles. We've started using inspection forms, meter readings. Assets are being put back in. And once we get those lovely little barcodes on the assets, it will be, here is your mobile device. Make sure that asset is on that work order. I don't know how they're going to enforce that, but it's going to be, you need to make sure that asset is on that work order. There will be exceptions, but I can talk about mobile for just a second because I thought mobile, again, was going to be a real quick rollout. 3 months, not a problem. I mean, it's a phone, it's an app. You download it and you go. No. That exposed all the back-end processes that we did or did not have and that were or were not correct. And so it was like, oh, now we got to go back and rethink things. I think we may be lucky to get it out we'll be lucky to get it out in 6. Realistically, it's probably going to be more like 12 to get mobile out the way we want it, because along with mobile, it's like, oh, now we've got to think about assignments and things like that, because up until this point, work orders, yeah, I went to my trade specialist, he handed me a sheaf of papers and I went along my merry way and did my work orders.
Yeah, it's all the supporting data.
Exactly.
To support using the app, more than just configure a screen.
Right, exactly. Instead of,
give it to a guy.
Right, and let it go. So scheduling planning has actually moved up into the short term. Inventory, yes, we do use inventory a bit. There are some things out there that I know that we are using, and it's like, oh no, we need to talk about that because it's just not being used in a correct way. Long-term health, monitor, predicting, condition monitoring, things like that, things that I know that will help the organization. I'm got to work now on the why it's going to help them and convince them that the ROI is there to do these things. So, no?
No, I agree.
Okay.
Shook my head the wrong way, did I?
All right. Questions besides you can't hear me?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Stand up. Be really loud. Or we have a mic.
Please use the mic. I guess I can put this down now.
I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about the architecture. Did you implement that on premise or on the cloud? How did that look like?
Yeah, so they were already in the Progitech cloud, working with Cohesive as the partner, Progitech as the backend on 7.6. So we kind of carried that forward. They're still in the Progitech cloud today. So Progitech kind of handles the backend of the OpenShift, everything like that. Cohesive handles all the kind of front-end configs, scripts, integrations, and then Rob and his team get to reap the benefits.
So it was a managed service on Cohesive platform?
Progitech's platform in the back, Cohesive's the implementing partner.
And that took about 6 months, roughly. I was trying to calculate the whole thing from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, the whole project was a 6-month project.
6 months,
You know,
And I think when we started in earnest, though, in January, right, it was really January, we went live the first week of April. So there was,
Yeah.
you know.
there's some pre-work you kind of have to do, but
All of us did a little bit of pre-work. And then, like Jerry and Rob, just some kind of just smoke testing, right? So, you know, we obviously wanted to make sure things were, you know, working before they turned it over to the users. So, but yeah, it was, I mean, once we got started on this,
yeah,
it was actually more like once.
yeah, I think one of the big takeaways, especially with Rob's story, is yes, the technical upgrade, the OpenShift, the everything, that is a piece of it. But there's support from upper management, there's getting on app points, there's training, there's, you know, looking at your data, make sure it's going to work correctly. There's a lot of aspects that you have to think about. And the OpenShift, the platform update, is just one of those.
Thank you. My very last question. How many users you have?
Do you know how many users you're at?
Most of the departments, so about 130. They're,
Thank
yeah.
you.
I will add one more thing, just so you don't think Jerry and I were just kind of hanging out drinking coffee on the street corner or anything. There were all kinds of SSIS packages, SSRS packages that we had to deal with, Power BI gateways and reports and all that. So there was all that. While they were handling the core of moving from 7.6 to 8, we were looking at the periphery. How is this going to affect the business? You know, do we tweak this package with a new connection string now? Do we revamp the package? Things like that were, like I say, all the stuff around Maximo that make it really hum, because we've got integrations from our computer-aided facility management system that tells us where people are, what buildings we have, things like that, basics that without which we're not going anywhere. So,
No one over here?
Yeah. Did you have any service industry solutions or add-ons installed as well? And then how heavy were you in Java customizations?
I'm sorry.
I don't think you have any industry solutions
No.
right now, do you?
No.
And as far as Java customizations, they didn't have any in 7.6, so we didn't have to worry about converting those to automation scripts or into customization archives. Really, I think you kind of said at the beginning, more vanilla as far as the core package. And really, you guys are leveraging kind of the things on the edge. What are we integrating with? How are we reporting? Things like that.
I will add, though, that HSE is one of the, is that an industry solution? I think
It is.
It is, yeah, that we are looking at, because now that we can have access to it, we've got, as safety and security, they're one of the people that do reviews, and we started poking at that a little bit and said, all right, this may work for you. That's probably in years 3 to 8 in our long-term plan, so.
Over here?
Can you elaborate on the complications with the JMS queues?
That's
Yeah,
it.
I think one of the big things is we led with Kafka queues for it and just had some issues there. The IBM's got some great documentation on setting up the JMS queues. We're using the standalone JMS pod within the mass application. You end up setting up a PVC, enabling continuous queues. And then once you get past that, it's more of a like for like. The only other struggle we kind of had on the back end is just making sure that the users that are processing from the queue, those integration users, had the right object structure security, because ultimately it's all connected.
So you had a dedicated pod just for the queues, you said?
Yeah, so if you're setting up mass, the same spot you add, how many UIs do I want, how many MIFs, how many crons, you can set up a standalone JMS queue. It's some additional properties on the pods that are going to use the queues, and a persistent volume claim so that they have somewhere to store the messages.
Thanks.
So you mentioned about the testing. Did you do manual testing or automation testing?
It's all you, Rob.
Yeah, no, that's all. That's a head shake. Yes, we did manual testing. We had scripts for the users, not every last button click, but it was, you've got a new work order. Go put it in there. Tell us what you recognize. The end goal being what you put in as a work order that you know now should be what you get out now. So It was not automated and not hyper-defined, but we needed them to tell us.
Yeah. And one supplementary question. Did you had any file-based integration in
Any-
7613?
Can you say that again?
Yeah.
File-based integration?
No file-based integration.
yeah.
So they were leveraging both on 7.6 and on Mass the table-based integrations. And that's kind of where we had that partitioned off already even in 7.6 to allow kind of that interface between the two. So both systems can read and write from those integration tables.
My question is around data cleanup. I know you mentioned it's a 6-month project, like from probably the mass point conversion to the go live. I know you must have done pre-prep, but from the business standpoint, what kind of data archival or data cleanup efforts, was it a part of this project? Or because you were already on Project Cloud, do you already have a process for that in terms of data archival and data cleanup for efficiency?
Can you help me?
Yeah, I didn't quite get it.
Yeah.
I'll just give you our example. So we have several data, and our business use cases, they want 10 years of data just for reporting purposes. From 7.5, we did archive some of the data so that they could still report off of it.
Okay.
But going into the mass environment, our effort right now is that we clean up as much data as possible in terms of work order data, all the related records, service requests, things like that. So my question is, did you apply any of those data cleanup or data archival methods or techniques in your project? And was it part of it?
Yeah, we didn't really feel like there was a need as part of this project to do any sort of work order cleanup, data cleanup. Have you ever done any sort of cleanup? So you've been with this for years.
I was going to say, no, at one point, management was very proud of saying that we have 30 years of data. And I cough under my breath and say, yeah, but the stuff before 2012 you don't want to mess with. So
Probably could archive that.
yeah, exactly. I was going to say, so archiving is in the roadmap somewhere. Don't ask me where, but it's one of those things that I've looked at and said, yes, we need to, as an organization, we just don't care about some of this stuff because it doesn't have the data that we need, and there's no way for us to go back and reasonably put that data in there. So yeah, data archiving probably needs to be done.
Hi. What strategy you applied, like move the data from one database to another? Like let's suppose you are in the Oracle and you want to move to the DB2. So did you apply anything, something similar scenario?
We were using the exact same database for both 7.6. There wasn't any moving to like DB2 that we had to do.
Yeah.
Your SQL base
Yeah,
today,
SQL
you
Server.
were with 7.6. We stuck with that 7.6 or that same exact database. There's a SQL Server upgrade we had to do kind of in the background as part of it, but we didn't have to convert database platforms in any way.
My next question, like did you request any business outage when you move to the production? If yes, like what is the duration of the migration of the complete movement of upgrade?
I'm sorry, can you say it again just a little louder?
Like when you move to the production environment from your upgrade, like how much the downtime you requested?
Downtime wise, it is pretty minimal. What did we schedule, like 12 hours?
I think, well, for our purposes, I think we told people it was going to be the weekend, that it was going to cut off at 4 p.m. on Friday, and they could get back into it either Sunday night or Monday morning when they came into work. But we were actually done with our testing and everything was working by noon on Saturday. So if we had wanted to, we could have turned them loose Saturday, but no one's been entering work orders on Saturday, so I wasn't worried about that.
And I think that's been true across a handful of these upgrades I've done, is we're doing it, just go straight through and usually start in the evening. By the next morning, we're going to be up, ready to go.
Is that going to be subjective on the size of your database though?
Yeah, this question is that timeline subjective to the size of the database? 100% it is, both your size and what kind of resources are you giving your database. Your database is not a terabyte. It's significantly less than that. I would say your biggest benchmark take whatever it took for you to do like a 7.5 to 7.6 update. That's probably a great one. What we're always doing is doing non-prods first. So we have a really good idea of how long that's going to take. And we just, double it basically, and that's our outage window, right? That gives you plenty of buffer if you need to fall back and do it a different weekend or whatever you need to do. You said we got another one back there.
Yeah, during your 6-month upgrade, did you also roll out mobile at the same time?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. So you had to make infrastructure accommodations for that to expand your wireless footprint or anything like that? Like, is that still in your plan or?
Oh, to roll out mobile?
Yes.
Yeah, we're actively working on that right now. And like I said, I thought that was going to be an easy, just, here's the app, go. And no.
Rob, what's your connectivity? Wi-Fi, cellular?
Yes.
Did you have to build out any of that infrastructure in preparation?
No, because most of our guys are in buildings somewhere, and so between cell service and Wi-Fi that they can hook up to, they're fine. We do have some of the field services guys that go out into the hinterlands. It may get spotty for them, and we'll see. But building it out, if they're not, Verizon is our provider in the county, and we've got very good coverage with them. So there are very few holes where they will not have coverage. I would say that even for those guys out there, when they leave the building, they start their timer. When they get done with their inspection, that's when they're going to come back to the truck and do it. And I would expect where they're parking their truck, they'll probably have some service, but that's an expectation that, we'll find out.
Has offline capabilities. Supplement there.
Hello. First question, which MAS version do you upgraded?
8.11 with a patch in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's like 8.11
Okay.
To that effect.
How do you deal with application points and application entitlements? As I know, even in Maximo 8.10, there is no automated way to adjust application entitlements based on security in manage. And so the only one way to do it is a manual process. Do you have any automated way to do it?
Yeah, it is relatively manual. There is a cron task in manage that will tell you what everybody needs, and your mass syncs down into the same table. So you're able to compare and do it a little bit. And then 8.11, you can actually interact with all those users with the API, even at the suite level. I don't think that we did that with your project. You've only got 100-some users. It's pretty easy to run down and do it. But if you were dealing with 20, 30,000 users, you need the automated.
This cron task is designed just for initial update, but every time you have a new change, it doesn't store. So you need to build some.
Yeah, there's a few different ways to approach as security changes. How do you update the suite? There's nothing out of the box that's going to do it kind of as you're going, and you just need to define that process. Fingers crossed, 9.1, we'll see that. All right, we've been told last question over here, but we'll hang out up front for a little bit.
Good morning, Darius Johnson, representing Air Force. Got a question. We're in 7.6, looking to move to MAS 8. We have tons of Java code. Do we have to update that Java code or get rid of it before we move to MAS 8?
Yeah, I would
Lesson learned?
highly recommend at least rationalizing which bits need to come forward. Making sure you're compiled on the right Java version is also, required. If you're moving forward with a Java class, it's going to have to get put as a Maximo customization archive so it can get built into your ear and applied correctly. We, even in 7.6, look at Java classes as kind of a last resort. So can we do it with an automation script? Can we do it with an escalation? What's that process going to be? I understand, if you've got a list of 100, 200 Java classes, it's a lot of work. But look at them, see what actually is required, what needs to be reapproached, what was built into HSE that you built in main Maximo that you can leverage now with some out-of-the-box functionality. The product is always growing. And I think just from a management standpoint, having a Java class is a little bit of a technical debt, a little bit of a liability. Try to have that in something that's a little more easily to support. Doesn't require any year rebuild if you need to tweak it, things like that. That's been kind of a core tenet of Project X hosting Even going back to 7.5, looking at every single Java customization that's put in front of us and saying, does this make sense? We have them, but they are pretty limited.